Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Save Childhood podcast.
I'm Jennifer McCarville.
And I'm Nicole Dugan, and today's topic is about the gift of an extra year.
Before kindergarten.
Before kindergarten. And how do you know if your child needs that extra gift? How do you know if you want that for your child and why? And it's an important decision that a lot of parents are thinking about at this time.
Absolutely, it really is. And it's worthy of consideration, mostly because our schools are not appropriately prepared for children and their developmental needs. So if that were the case, this conversation would be very different. And of course, the school that we have, marvelously made, the School for Young Children, it is developmentally aligned and is incredibly appropriate. But even then, there are children that we know they're just not ready to go into the kindergarten classroom when their chronological age is 5 before September 1st here. So whatever that is for wherever you live, I know it varies a little bit across the country, but it's not huge differences. But
yeah, and when you say they're not ready, what do you mean? How would we know that they're not ready?
Right, which is so funny because I actually don't even like us talking about readiness.
Right.
But the reality is, what does it mean when we say they need another year? And what we say is they're not finished in the preschool yet. So it's not anything negative. It's actually a beautiful gift that you're giving them of recognizing what their developmental needs are. But in order to be ready, there are several things that we need to be seeing for children at that age and that stage of development. And some of those things would include the ability to kind of self-regulate, to impulse control, to have that maturation of their brain and their prefrontal lobe to delay gratification. Very important. There are some other things that would indicate a child has the potential, the good, strong potential to be successful in kindergarten. But I think it's important. Self-regulation is probably our biggest one. Even the American Academy of Pediatrics says a child who doesn't have that self-regulation is going to struggle with formal academic instruction. And let's face it, our kindergartners are getting formal academic instruction at rates that are ludicrous, but that's just the reality. So, just being able to allow their brains and their bodies the time to develop so that they can be successful.
Right, because if they're thrown into, I use the word thrown loosely, but if they're thrown into that environment and they aren't going to be successful, think about what that does for their self-esteem and confidence.
Well, and their view of school and learning for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, it's going to have a hugely negative impact. And then that comes with a lot of, psychological impacts down the road. So to undo the damage of putting a child into that environment when they are not physically, cognitively, emotionally prepared for it is going to be an endeavor that lasts years and years and years, if ever you can really deal with that for a child. So there are really long-term consequences to that.
Right, and Stanford did a study. Tell us what
they
found.
did. Well, they found that when children were given an extra year, the gift of time before entering kindergarten, rather than pushed into that just because the calendar says they're 5 by, August 30th or what have you, just giving them that one extra year dramatically lowered the rates of inattention and hyperactivity in children at age 11.
Oh, wow.
So, and once again, whenever we have these conversations, this is 6 years later. We all, we're in a society where it's like, well, we want to see it right now. Right now, they're doing fine. Well, look, they're doing fine. Well, for one thing, I think fine should be a minimal percentage of time that we accept that they're fine, that any of us are fine. And fine's not a bad thing. There are times we're just fine. But fine and struggling, fine and having a hard time with things, making it through, those things are big flags that we need to be we need to be sure that we pay attention to. And this research out of Stanford saying at 11 years old, less children with hyperactivity, less children with inattentiveness. They're more successful across the board academically. That's huge. And
Right.
what a great piece of information for educators and parents alike to hold on to when making this decision. It may not be that you see the struggle right now, but you are going to avoid some challenges for them down the road that could be really detrimental to their lifelong learning experience.
Right.
And there's some information too from David Elkind. He's really fantastic. He wrote The Hurried Child, but he has been warning forever. And he wrote a book called Miseducation: Preschoolers at Risk, which really caught my attention in the late 1990s and early 1990s, actually. Just his work is really impressive as an advocate for children based on what the research and the science says children need. And he talks in The Hurried Child warns people about the emotional harm that putting children into academic situations before they're ready for them can cause those children. These are big indicators that we shouldn't overlook.
Right.
So, they can learn the academic knowledge, but that emotional readiness and that physical readiness, those things have to unfold at the child's own pace. And respecting that is the best thing we can do for the child lifelong.
Right.
So.
For sure. And so if they're given more time, they're going to be more emotionally resilient.
Absolutely.
They're going to, what are some other benefits?
They're going to have stronger coordination. They're going to have better fine motor and large motor skills. They're going to have richer play, which builds intelligence. They're going to make deeper friendships because they have the ability to emotionally see someone else's perspective at a different level. And all of these things help them gain confidence in themselves. And so they become, lifelong people who have a whole lifetime of feeling good about themselves and knowing they can take risks and not having to feel like the world has overloaded them.
Right.
So they can develop the skills that we know people need. They can develop the grit. They can, develop that ability to see things from other people's perspective and problem solve.
And some people, if they're questioning someone that decides to give the gift of an extra year, they might say like, well, won't they be bored if they're a year older? Or they might say, won't they be behind? Won't they be behind socially? Won't they? And so what would you say to that?
Well, I would always say behind what? Who decides what behind is? A child who is growing and developing at their own pace, following their own path, is not behind anyone. So that's the first thing we need to look at. And that goes back to not comparing children. And of course, we have developmental, norms. We have a developmental pathway for people in all areas of development. So, but children will take different times to accomplish different milestones. So behind is really a word that we need to really eliminate probably from our vocabulary when we're talking about children and their learning, their academics, etc. They are where they need to be. So that's the first thing I would say about that is behind what and who got to decide that.
Right.
So that's the first thing I would say. And I know you asked me another question. Oh, what if they're bored? Well, I think if the children are bored, they're probably not in the right environment, because for children, environments that have plenty of time to explore and play and have a little bit of novelty here and there and are hands-on and experience-filled, that they're not going to be bored. Children who learn how to play, who can build for long periods of time or create art or just really have the ability in their environment each day to explore and play, etc., they're not going to be bored. Why would, just making children be in a scheduled environment all day long where someone else is telling them what to do every minute of every day and moving them through stations of learning, etc., at a, really at a factory pace, almost like cogs in a machine, right? That doesn't mean they're not bored. That just means they're worn out, exhausted, and they're not developing their own ability to solve problems and try new things. So keeping a child busy constantly doesn't mean they're not bored.
And what about, this is another one I've heard too, well, he's just so smart.
Oh yeah, he is. I absolutely. This has nothing to do with intellect.
Right.
This has absolutely nothing to do with how smart they are. They need to have activities to do and things to be involved in, and that doesn't. I don't mean organized things. I mean, again, open-ended materials. Creative materials. They are so smart, and they're not going to stop growing and learning if we're reading to them and we're talking with them and we're listening to them, and they're, like I said, creating and building and going to the library and having some outings now and again. Life is just full and rich, so they're definitely smart. That's not a question or a factor in this at all.
So I hear you saying that you're a fan of the gift of an extra year.
I am, almost always. The thing to look at in the gift of an extra year is, are we making this decision because we feel like, a year from now, they're going to succeed in a bigger way, in a better way, in a stronger way than they would this year. There are some cases where, and it's very rare, and it's usually not going into kindergarten, I'll tell you that, but there are some times when you're looking at a child and their development, and the gift of another year isn't going to change anything. That is how the child is wired. That is how the child is going to function socially. That is how they're going to function academically. In those situations, I'm not a fan of it, because the whole point of that gift of the extra year is to give that child time for their development to unfold at their pace.
Right.
And so if that's the thing you're basing the decision on, I am a fan. I'm definitely a fan. And I think also the expectations for children are so harsh and inappropriate. That I gave my daughter the gift of an extra year, and my son has a spring birthday, and I wanted to give him the gift of an extra year because of the expectations being so inappropriate in kindergarten. And honestly, I wish I had. And highly intelligent children, they're all smart. All of our children are smart, all of them. And so it has nothing to do with that whatsoever. But emotionally, the expectation to produce and perform in kindergarten for my son was so stressful. And it was life altering, and in not a good way. And I thought about it at the time because I know the expectations are inappropriate. So I think a lot of it has to do with the expectations where your child goes to school. And also don't fool yourself, because I was doing a workshop with teachers last summer. I believe it was last summer. It might have been the summer before. And there was a lady in the audience who shared with me that she had left her local school district after, I think it was 20 years of teaching kindergarten, had left because in that district they were requiring the kindergarten children to write a paper by the end of the school year that had 5 sources. 5 sources. What does that even mean to a kindergartner? And what are we doing? So what's going on in some of these classrooms for children is just absolutely unimaginable. So I think it's the big question, hard for parents too. Where do you get those answers? Who's going to expect that from my child in kindergarten? So you need to talk to other parents in the school that you're going to. You need to read over the information they have in the school district online, and really get as many answers as you can, because I'm still shocked by that.
Yeah, well, it is shocking.
It's shocking.
Totally inappropriate.
And I have to admit, I did not research it after she told me that, but I thought, why would she lie to me?
Right.
What reason would she have
Right.
for not to be telling me the truth?
Right.
So it's shocking, but yeah.
So some children are going to be ready at 5, some are not.
Yeah.
But even if they are ready, you still could give them that gift of an extra year.
Absolutely, and I don't think you'd lose.
Yeah.
I think that, again, they do need to be in an appropriate environment during that year, and that environment could be at home, could be in a developmental preschool, a play-based school. They're in those environments. The challenges the children face are so complex because they're real world, they're hands-on, they get deeply engaged, and that's going to help build all the skills and the knowledge that they need to be successful.
What advice would you give to parents who are making this decision but then might be feeling judged by family members or friends? What would you tell them?
That's so hard, and that happens with, I feel like parents share that with us a lot, don't they? Like, my family doesn't understand, my family is wondering why I'm doing this, or, a friend even. And of course, the first thing we have to remember is that this child has been entrusted to you, and you have done your research, and you know your child, and you are taking this approach eyes wide open, fully accepting your child for who they are and how they're designed, and giving them the best start you can. And I also know that those people mean well. Sure. They do mean well. They care about you, they care about your child, and they're really just curious because they don't realize how different kindergarten is than it was when they sent their own children to kindergarten. And the grandparents, like, when I sent you to kindergarten, it was fine. I don't understand why you're not going to send her. And so I think that saying things to them like, I'm choosing this because I've done the research and I'm informed. I'm choosing this because I trust my child's process of learning, and I don't want them to be put in a situation that's going to give them a distaste for a lifelong experience and education. So, and the world is full of rich and wonderful experiences, and this can't stop my child from learning. It's not going to stop your child from learning at all. It's just going to give them the time and space that they need to develop deeper and more specific skills to build on later.
Right.
So, we want to make sure that when they go on to kindergarten that it is the right thing for their brains and their bodies. And we know that it will be the right thing when we give them this gift of time right now.
Yeah.
Thank you for caring, but thank you for caring, and we really feel great about it, and we appreciate your support.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really curious to hear from the listeners if they have given a gift of an extra year to one of their children, or and what they think about it. So if that's you, leave us a comment and let us know if you've chosen that and how it went.
Yeah,
we already know how it went, but just leave a comment and let us know.
And then also, if you didn't and wish you had.
Oh.
Or, is there anybody who did and feels like it wasn't the right thing?
Yeah.
And we have had, and this is a beautiful thing about a developmental approach too, we have here, on a rare occasion, in fact, I just think once in 15 years, had a child that going into primary, there was a year they'd gotten an extra year in kindergarten. And because we're developmental, everything kind of unfolded, and that child was ready to take on a more challenging math in the second grade year. And so we are able to meet that because of the way our school works. But other than that, it's never, and that was just what it is. But that looks down the road for the older child, who has the impact of an extra year, and also would have done beautifully without being moved in that area of math.
Right.
So I think remembering that it's not a race, that slower is actually better more often than not, and that it's easier to learn things, especially if they're challenging for you, when you learn them a little bit later.
Right, which we will have a podcast about what age that should be.
We sure will. It's coming up
soon. So you'll be able to unpack that more. But that's it for today's episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Let us know if you have done this. Follow us, subscribe. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and new episodes of our podcast drop every Tuesday morning, 6 a.m.
Yeah, awesome. And check out the Save Childhood website and the 14 tenets of saving childhood, because if we all are working to give children what they need, it's definitely going to change them for generations. And that's important work we're doing.
It sure is.
Just do the right thing.
Yes. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.